Okay, so looking up here, guys. Shh. Today's lesson, some of you are going to be figuring out all by yourself. Today's lesson, we're going to be working with finite series. We don't do infinite series in here, even though the formula is really easy. The difference between a sequence and a series, I am going to be talking about Gauss's method, which you'll have to know by his name so that you can use it, which is basically just the sum formula. I'm going to be teaching you to summation notation using a Greek letter. So that's today. But most of it, if you follow with me, and most of it is right from the skills practice, you should find it really easy. If you do this with me day by day, then it's really easy. So, difference between a sequence and a series. Here's my sequence, 3, 6, 9, 12. Here's my series, 3 plus 6 plus 9 plus 12. What's the difference? I put a plus sign in there, I'm adding, I'm finding the sum. Series is sum. When we find the series, when they give us a series, we're finding a sum. Okay, now, here is some basic info that I'm going to be talking about, but important is when I get to write a function to represent the sum of a finite arithmetic series, that is one of the questions that I see people miss each year because they forget to leave the variable in the answer because they have this need to replace the n, and then they end up missing it. So make sure you can do this because I will pull test questions from there. Your homework is 8 through 24 all. So write that down if you haven't already, and I will get going with the lesson, 8 to 24 all. So I didn't pick up Friday's homework, so that means I'll be picking up one of these other 3. And as 6th and 7th period found out, I don't always pick up the same one each period. Okay, here we go. So this tells me that a series is a sum of terms in a given sequence, and it's the sum of the first n terms. So do you see the subscript with the s sub n? Subscript means it goes below. So when it says s sub 3, you're getting the sum of the first 3 terms. So if I wrote s sub 18, then I would be getting the sum of the first 18 terms, exactly. And you don't have to write this top part down verbatim. This right here, on the other hand, one of your questions on your test, you are going to be building a summation notation given my information. So we build deeper into it tomorrow and the next day. So this here is the Greek letter sigma. If you ever do a college visit and you go to frat row, you'll see these Greek letters on the houses. That is the Greek letter sigma. Okay? So what this is made up of is the lower bound is giving you what you're going to start with, what number I'm going to plug into the variable first. The upper bound, the top value, in this case n, is going to be the last number I'm going to sub in to get the last value in the pattern. So like 3, 6, 9, 12. Would you agree 12 is the 4th term in my pattern? Given an equation right there, a formula, I could plug in the 4 and it would give me back the 12, the value of the 4th term. What's going to go right here where the A is going to be the explicit formula you learned on Friday. Okay, that's why it's so important. So on one of the problems later on today, I'll show you an example, and then tomorrow and the next day we do more of them. So on the answer column for your test on Friday, you will see on one of them, I actually built in the sigma, and then you just fill in all the other stuff. So you can't say, oh, I couldn't answer it because I couldn't make a sigma. Yes? So when you create your own, you're going to start it with I equals 1 or n equals 1, a variable equals 1, up through as many terms as there's going to be. When they create it, meaning whether it's the resource or me or the ACT or SAT, they can start with I equals anything they want. So, example, if this is from 1 up through 18, would you agree there'd be 18 terms? What if this lower bound is I equals 0 up to 18? How many terms are there then? 19. So that's the way they would build it. And from that, though, you just told me what n is. And that's going to help us because our sum formula is going to use n. And you already know how to find a sub n because we did that on Friday, and a sub 1. So you have enough to be able to find a sum. Anybody still looking at this? Okay. So here is the formula of the day. Please memorize it. It is basically this. I'm going to point. It doesn't matter if the 2 down here is under the a1 plus an, or if it's under the n, or if it's under the whole thing. This is saying add your first and last term together, divide it by 2, like an average, and multiply by the number of terms. That's what the formula tells you to do. This is Gauss's formula. First plus last divided by 2 times number of terms. So S sub n is the sum of the terms. N is how many terms are there. A sub 1 is the first term, and A sub n is the last term. So earlier today, somebody said, is the A1 and AN the same A1 and AN from Friday? Absolutely. A1 is always the first term. A sub n is always that last term or the missing term, the term you're trying to find. N is always how many terms are there, number of terms. Question? Are you writing stuff down? Anybody still writing it down? For sigma notation. So no. So this is just the basic formula. So what you're going to see with my examples is most of the time the pattern will give you a sub 1. And it's going to probably give me a difference. And then I'm going to find the a sub n like we did on Friday and then use it to find the sum. Okay, so from the skills practice, number 7. I kept that there because this is a super easy one. So we're taking little steps. So the pattern says 3 plus 5 plus 7 plus 9 plus 11. I know you can add those up in a calculator or in your head really quickly. So why would I want to use a formula? Because your pattern on your test is going to be more like number 12, but instead of going plus 30 as your last term, I would do plus 102. I don't really want to have to list all those terms and then go back and add them all up. So if you understand the formula for an easy one, then you can do it for anything. Okay? So would you agree your first term here is 3? Let me know. Yes? What do you do to 3 to get 5? So if the rule is add 2, then your common difference is 2. Okay? How many terms are there? Count them. 5. So all this is a substitution. N is 5. A sub 1 is 3, A sub n is 11, the divisor is 2, 3 and 11 is 14, divided by 2 is 7, times 5 is 35, done. This is the formula every time. This is the sum formula. That's Gauss's formula to find the sum of the n terms. Every time. Oh, I didn't on this one because they handed me the pattern, but I'm going to show you when we get to number 12 how I might have to work for the n to know what it is. That's a good question. So sometimes you go in knowing everything so you're not missing a link, so you have choices. Okay, next one. What is your first term? Good, -2. How many terms are there? 6. Okay. What is the last term? So I'm not missing anything. So I can go right to plugging it in. Please do so. Answer, anyone? -27. Question? Uh-huh. The subscript or the 6? No, no, no. It's the number of terms that are there. So question on the floor is, for the n, on the outside right here, can I choose anything I want? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 terms. So specifically, I'm looking for the sum of the 6 terms. Now, looking this way before you get a private invitation to look this way. Number 12. They didn't hand me n. So yes, I know I can fill in the pattern, which you can count on your fingers in a few minutes. I'll show you that way. But first, let's do this algebraically. Back on Friday, when we dealt with the explicit formula, the a sub n formula, I'll refresh your memory. You need to know this by heart. So tell me what a sub n is, please. Look in the pattern. What is a sub n? 30. Good. What is the first term, please? 3. Very good. We don't know how many terms there are. I don't feel like listing them out. I'm not in the mood. But what is the common difference? 3. So given this formula, if you know 3 out of 4 pieces of information, you can find your missing value. Okay? You can solve this however you want. This is what I see. I move the 3 over to the other side. I take away 3. You can distribute the 3. I see dividing by 3. So 3 goes into it 9 times. And then I move my 1 over to see that n is 10. And I wouldn't even list every one of those steps because I know you process some of that in your head. Now, with that being said, here's Gauss's formula. You know the first. What is the first? You know the last. What is it? You know how many, which is all over. Do the math, please. Answer? 165? Okay. So, if you have a reasonable amount of values and you didn't want to go through this a sub n bit, the explicit formula, this is what you can do. If it's more than 10, I don't recommend it. But anyway, so you can count on your fingers. Of course, you have to be able to count by that denomination. So if we count by 3s, you're going to do the counting. But 3, 6, 9. Keep helping me.
12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30.
Stop. How come stop? That's what I wanted. So that's that same n equals 10 that we found using algebra. Okay? So it's not a big deal if it's like that many values, but then when I run out of fingers, I really don't want to count on my toes. And I don't want to have to start listing it on a piece of paper because that would actually take longer than doing the formula. So that's where I'm talking about reasonable amount of values. Once you get too far, the formula is so much quicker. Okay? Counting on your fingers would be what we did when you were little before you learned formulas, algebra 2 formulas. Okay, next thought. Okay, this is that pet peeve of mine when people would mess up their functions. The function is going to have an n in the answer, in their final answer. If it does not, you will miss the whole thing. Okay? So be careful, especially those of you that aren't listening to me right now. So this pattern right here for 13 through 18, this one goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, it starts really easy. That's why, do you notice I do my own examples because the ones they give you in the skills practice, they always choose the easiest one, it seems like. So would you agree A is 1 and D is 1? Now I need to find the value of A sub n, listen to my words, in terms of n. I want to get the value of A sub n, like what goes in this spot, in terms of n. That means n is going to be in my answer. Okay? It could be 3n plus 18. It could be 7n. It could be 6n minus 5. But n is going to be in that value. So I went back to the explicit formula, and I said A sub n, what I'm looking for, equals 1. Where did I get 1 from? First term, good. Plus n minus 1 from the formula. And the common difference between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 is 1. Good. If you distribute the 1, nothing changes. What happens to your 1 and negative 1? It cancels. So in this easy example, the first value is 1. The fifth value is 5. Guess what the 18th value would be? 18, because it started with 1 and counted by ones, like if you were numbering your paper. So they said, okay, with that being said, let's go to Gauss's formula. And you're just going to replace your A1 and your AN, but remember your AN is in terms of N. So here's the formula again. So I brought down the N. A1 was 1. You want to write this down or re-follow it in your book or put notes or whatever. A sub N is N. 2 comes from the formula, and then just clean it up. And then I think in the book it tells you what number to plug in, like a 3 or whatever, and that's the part of their other example where they're subbing in to find the value, the sum of 3 terms or the sum of 8 terms or whatever they ask for. Okay, I want to do 16 with you. So over there in that pretty cranberry color, I wrote my steps. Step 1 for 16, replace A sub 1 and D to find A sub N. So A sub 1 is negative 4. What is your common difference? 4. So everybody agree with that information. Explicit formula, I did a plug-in, but I didn't simplify it yet. I left that for you to do with me. So A1 is negative 4 plus N minus 1 from the formula times D is 4. Could you clean that up, please, for me? What do you get simplified? 4n minus 8, is that what you said? Perfect. 4n minus 8. Could I write negative 8 plus 4n? Yeah, same thing. Okay, so now I have A sub n. Now we're going to Gauss's formula. N stays n. What is A sub 1? What is A sub n? All over. Can you simplify that, please? Yes, I'm going to reduce. So inside the parentheses, you had a 4n minus 12, but then you had to distribute the n on the outside, so that gave us 4n squared minus 12n, but it was over 2, so I saw somebody do this, which meant we're going to simplify because it's even, even, even. So my final value would be 2n squared minus 6n. So if I wanted to find the sum of the first 18 terms, I would replace both ends with 18. In my calculator, I would literally go 18 squared times 2 minus 6 times 18, enter, and it would give me the final sum without having to list out all 18 values and then having to go back and add them all up. Formulas can be your friend. Question? Okay, as people are finishing writing, remember that Thursday is your skills check, the weekly homework question. Friday is your test. You got the sheet of paper to do your extra credit for the exam review that I will take any time between now and the 14th. But remember, it is absolutely due by the 14th when you walk in the door. After that, it's too late. I don't want it, okay? Remember that the retake opportunity is next Wednesday, right after school. Okay? Anybody still using this? Lovely. Okay, last part. Now, up there I wrote you a note. On 19 through 24, I'm going to take a variation of this question, anything from 19 to 24, and put it on your test. So in addition to your study guide, pretty much anything from this lesson 6.2 could also be there. There was no reason for me to retype these marching band problems. I am telling you up front that I could choose anything from here and put it on your test. Okay? So be good at that. So the story is this. We've got a marching band that marches in a formation consisting of 8 rows. Stop. How many rows are there? Guess what that is? Is it A1? Is it AN? Is it N? Is it your difference? It's N. Good. Then it says the first row has 2 band members. Stop. Which is that? A sub 1. Good. And each successive row has 3 more members than the previous row. D is 3. Awesome. And then it continues, use the given information to answer the question. Write an arithmetic series to represent the number of band members in the formation. So we're doing little steps. A series could be this 2 plus 5 plus 8 plus 11 plus 14 plus 17 plus 20 plus 23. That is listing out all the values with a plus sign. So that is in terms of a series. We're going to work our way into finding the sum algebraically in a sec. Okay? But this says we want to write out the series that's representing it, not just find the sum or find the series. If you do add those all up, you're going to get 100. I'm going to prove that to you later by working it through algebraically. Okay? After we do number 20, I'm going to show you how to set up the sigma notation, the summation notation. Now, next thought. They want me to write an explicit formula to calculate the number of band members in any given row. Then it wants me to use the explicit formula to verify that the last row has 23 members or that A sub 8 is 23. So we already know that from above. We're just proving it with our formula. That's all it's asking you to do so far. So explicit formula, you need your A1 and your D. So into my formula from Friday, I'm going to replace the A1 and the D and simplify, and I get 3n minus 1. If n is 8, plug it in. Do the math. You can do it in your head. Tell me what you would get. 3 times 8, take away 1. Good. So I don't expect to see work there. I know you can process that in your head. But I wanted you to see that whether you list it out or you use the formula, you're going to get the same result. So why do a formula if I can just look at a list? Because, again, I could ask you for the 103rd term. I don't want to list out that many terms. It's easy when I'm only listing out 8 terms. Question? Okay. Now, before I get into using Gauss's formula, I'm going to show you my summation notation. So there's my sigma. If this is just me sidebarring, turning it in, because we're right there with the explicit formula. If I want to write in summation notation, boys, the sum of the first 8 terms, you're going to start with 1 on the bottom. When you create it yourself, you start with 1 on the bottom, and you work your way up to how many terms? What did I say? 8. So you might see an I equals 1, or you might see an N equals 1. I've seen both depending on the resource. The formula that's going to go right here comes from the explicit formula for the problem. So wasn't the explicit formula 3n minus 1? That's exactly what goes there. Now, this is what the formula will do for you. If you plugged 1 in for n, 3 times 1, take away 1 gives you 2. Wasn't that the value of your first term in the pattern? If you take your upper limit, the 8, and plug it in for n, what do you get? 23. But if the whole pattern wasn't listed out, that's going to give it to me right away. Okay? And then if I want to actually find the sum, I'm going to plug it into Gauss's formula. So I know A1, I know N, I know A sub N, I can find the sum. Besides just adding all the values up. So that's what they're going to have you do right here. We said, so this one is taking it a different step. This time there's only going to be 5 rows. So use Gauss's formula to determine the number of band members in the first 5 rows algebraically, not just adding up the first 5 numbers. So try it. I gave you everything you need. I gave you n is 5. I gave you a sub 1 is 2. I gave you n is 14. And I gave you the formula. Done? How much? 40. Good. Question? Uh-huh. Anybody on this before I go on? Okay. Next one, 22. Use Gauss's formula to determine the total number of band members in the formation. Total number of band members in the formation. So that's back up to the original story. So n was 8. You know the first row had 2. You knew the last row, the 8th row, had 23. You actually already know the answer. Did you get it? It is 100. Remember when I took those numbers up above and added them all up, that pattern? That added up to be 100. If I did it manually, that's what I got. When I use the formula, that's what I get. Okay? Questions? Again, and I reiterate over and over again, on the test I'm going to use those higher numbers, so n's going to be more than you want to list out. That's why you're going to want to use the formula and not just list out 29 terms or 37 terms or 103 terms or whatever. Okay, moving on. 23. Determine, oh, this is going to have more work. Determine the additional number of band numbers needed to create 4 more rows. So without you reading what I've already put up there, I need you to think through what you need to do. So we're going to add 4 more rows. I want everybody to be able to sit down. So basically, I want to know how many more chairs I need. What do I need to know? What do I need to do? Give me something I would want to find.
Could use explicit formula to find out.
Okay, so I could use the explicit formula and find the value of the 12th term. Good, I would do that absolutely. So once I know the value of my 12th term, what would I do next? Okay, I would use my A1, which is 2. I would plug it into the explicit formula and find the sum of the first 12 terms. And then once I have the sum of my first 12 terms, do I already know the sum of the first 8 terms that were there? How many? 100. So what would I do with the 2 values? Subtract, find the difference, right? Because you want to know how many more chairs you want. You know how many are there. We want to be able to put out some more. So here we go. So exactly what you said. I used explicit to find A sub 12 is 35. So earlier somebody said, could I just continue with the pattern? Absolutely. If it's only 4 more rows, you could have continued with the given pattern and gotten the same 35. Now, once you have that, you guys said that you want me to use Gauss's formula to find the sum of the 12 terms. So there it is on your right side. This is the 100 that I just copied and pasted from above. You want to find the difference. What is the difference? Good, 122. So the long approach to this would have been the person that actually went through and, like listed everything out, had to add everything up, go back, add up the smaller amount, then go back and find the difference. Anybody question on this before we do one more? Anybody still using it? Nope. Okay. Last one. So I've totally held your hand with this, so you have no excuse to miss it on the test other than you chose not to go back and look at your notes. Okay. Determine the number of band members in the formation if the last row in the formation contains 44 members. So now I'm changing the information. Do you know how many rows there are? No. Okay. So I do know A sub n is 44. I do know that it starts with 2, and I do know my difference is 3. So we need to find out what n is, because to find the sum, you need an n. So there is your explicit formula. Anybody get a value for n using the explicit formula? Okay. So we have n is 15. What else I could have done is I could have gone back to that original pattern if I wanted, keep counting until I hit 44, and then go back and count how many terms were there. Okay, so am I done? I want to know the number of band members. So now you're going to Gauss's formula, and you're going to plug in the n is 15, the A1 is 2, the A sub 15 is 44, and I'll let you finish that all by yourself. Okay? You can do a bunch of the study guide already. Remember, you were working on that exam review, so you're not leaving everything to the last minute, like the weekend or something like that. Please, please do a bit each day when you have extra time. If you're sitting in a class and you're doing nothing, then take out one of those study guides and work on them and get as many done as you can so that there's less for you to do at home. Okay? So, good job today.